today's topic isn't going to be only focusing on sickle cell. Today's topic is going to be focusing on generally the improving the collaboration between NGOs so that we can all kind of achieve the purposes and aims that we hope to. So I will start by doing a round of introductions. My name is Bukola Bolarinwa. As I said, with the Sickle Cell Aid Foundation, I'm also the founder of Haima Health Initiative. I've been working in the NGO space and in advocacy in general for about 10 years now, actually, since I joined SCAF in 2011. And since then, we've watched, the space grow and so many more players come into it, but it still seems like our challenges are exactly the same. So I'm going to pass on to Toyin next to do a little bit of introduction, and then Elma, and then Mr. Oluseyi. Thank you.
Thank you, Buki. Welcome, everybody. My name is Toyin Adeshola. I'm the Executive Director, Sickle Cell Advocacy and Management Initiative, a nonprofit focused on helping people with sickle cell and their families live healthy and productive lifestyles. And we are also focused on advocacy. I'm also the current chairperson of the Coalition of Sickle Cell NGOs. I'm an author and a speaker and a coach. Thank you.
Thank you, Toyin. Elma, can you go next with your introductions, please?
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good afternoon, rather. My name is Elma Aluge. I'm currently the president for the Sickle Cell Aid Foundation that is actually hosting this webinar today. And basically, I personally think that collaborating is important for different things, but specifically for sickle cell, just because of the state of sickle cell in Nigeria and what everybody wants moving forward. So I'm actually actively looking towards engaging on the topic today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Oluseyi.
Yes, good morning. My name is Oyebisi Oluseyi, and I work with the Nigerian Network of NGOs. The Nigerian Network of NGOs is a membership-based organization spread across the country. And what we do is we work on enabling environment for nonprofits, to build the capacity of nonprofits across the country, and also campaign on the attainment of the SDGs. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And we actually have one more panelist, Crystal from Irede Foundation. So I don't know if the host can try and see if she's one of the participants and just bring her up to panelists so we can have our panel complete, but we'll get started while they try to do that. And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Oluseyi, actually, given your role, Nigerian Network of NGOs, to really ask the question, like, why are we having this conversation today? What is the importance of collaboration, given the fact that we have so many problems, as you know, in Nigeria, that so many NGOs are trying to tackle? Shouldn't we be encouraging more NGOs to go out on their own and try and figure out some of these problems? Mr. Oluseyi, can you hear us?
He's on mute.
Hello?
Yeah, sorry, did you hear my question?
No, I did not, please. My apologies, yeah.
Okay, I'll repeat it. So I was asking, like to dive into the topic today, given your role working with the Nigerian Network of NGOs, what is the importance of collaboration? Why should we even be talking about this topic, given that we have so many problems in the society that different NGOs are trying to solve? Why don't we just encourage more NGOs to just go out there and do their own thing?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. We live in an interconnected world. And the more we wake up every day, the more complex situations become. And as nonprofits, we all do whatever we do for the purposes of bringing development to the doorsteps of the common man. And we're eager to help because we've seen a problem and we want to solve those problems. And collaboration itself requires that we work with both our friends and allies, and also work with people that think differently away from how we think. So sometimes I always say, that we must all appreciate that collaboration is not easy, and it's not going to be easy. Because the way I've defined it is you're working with your friends on the one hand, and you're working with your enemy on the other hand. Because God help you if that organization you need to collaborate with, you have some personal issues with whoever is leading or whoever will be working in that collaboration. So sometimes, because we also have different interests and different understanding of the issues, we work, our understanding becomes different, and we work sometimes in different manners. While collaboration is important, I must say that in most cases, it is not always necessary. And this is the reality that, having gone through COVID all of last year and also this year, there are some conventional thoughts that we have about collaboration. So when we hear collaboration, we're like, okay, we need to work together on this. Then when people commit to doing X, Y, Z, they will do what they have committed to do. However, those conventional thoughts are challenged at the point of implementation. So let's assume that NGO has committed to provide funding for XYZ during a collaboration. A couple of things might happen, and we probably won't be able to do that. So because of the voluntary nature of collaboration also, we tend to have some of these challenges. So while I agree that we need to collaborate, we must situate the conversation around: one, collaboration is not easy. Two is collaboration has its own DNA, and there are a lot of elements that drives collaboration. One is the voluntary nature. You can't enforce anything in collaboration. There are some conventional thoughts that we have that are no longer valid. So I have defined collaboration, and I'm based on a course I'm doing at the moment that is also looking at collaboration. Collaboration is when you work together jointly with an organization on a project. And the second definition is when you have to work with your enemy. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Oluche. I think that sets the context nicely. I want to go next to Toyin. I mean, when Mr. Oluche was talking about the challenges, I was just thinking about you running the coalition of sickle cell NGOs. You know, I see how you struggle, number one, with the issue of, because it's voluntary, asking people to come for meetings. Some people show up, some people don't. Asking people to, you know, do something by a deadline. Some people do it, some people don't. So in your role leading that coalition, how have you been able to manage some of these challenges that Mr. Oluche has just highlighted?
You're right. You put it plainly. The reality is that sometimes, like Oluche said, is voluntary, and you can't force people to do things. Yes, they may. Everybody who comes to a collaborative state has their own culture, their own mindset, or reason why they're in that collaboration. And sometimes when it doesn't, how will I call it, follow with your own perception of what it should be, it can be a struggle trying to get people to come on board. I see collaboration, like even in a business where partnership is involved, there's a level of trust, and there's a level of, let me see what others are doing before I jump in. It's been challenging, but one thing I've realized is that there's one thing when they say that maybe it's only 20% of people will do what you want to do. I try and work with those 20% if I don't get everybody, because the reality is when we are in a collaborative thing, it's not easy for everybody to come on board. It's not easy to get everybody to really follow through on what you want. But once you find, no matter how few within that space, people that you can work with, it's important that we tap into that and just work with those people as much as possible, because the reality, it's difficult to try and manage people in general, let alone manage people who have their own individual NGOs.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I want to come to you, Alma, as well. Like building on what Toyin has said. We've had situations where we try to collaborate with people, just like Mr. Oluche has said, and either, you know, you end up having very divergent views, or what you guys planned, you know, somebody goes one direction and somebody else goes in another direction. So how have you, in your role as president, been able to manage that, especially if you give an example of the COVID project that we did last year?
I'd say that like at the forefront of collaboration in itself is the leadership of the collaboration, because even though a collaboration is made up of leaders in their own spaces, it's impossible to put in all of those leadership potentials in one room without one person actively, taking the role of leading. And sometimes leading is difficult, especially in a space like this where the bulk of the work eventually falls on you. Most people are working for free, so it's difficult to have accountability, it's difficult to push, it's even difficult to share a vision. So I think that for most collaborative work, the first thing is identifying what the vision is and finding a way as the head or as the leader of that space to translate the vision so that everybody comes on board. Now, once you get everybody on board, they can see where you're going with whatever idea it is. They can see that you know how to put the pieces together. You just need the people that would actually do the work. A lot of times it falls into place. With the COVID project, it was time consuming, but it was easy managing the people because everybody knew, okay, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is the time frame for how things are going to happen. This is my specific role, and this is the expectations that is being had of me. It was easy to put together. So I'd say that for collaboration to work, leadership is key, and not just any kind of leadership, servant leadership, where you understand exactly what you need to do, how you need to do it, the people, what they need to do, and translating all that to the team.
Yeah, thank you, Alma. I think you put it very succinctly. So when we're thinking about collaboration, we need to be thinking about even within the various NGOs or organizations coming together, there has to be someone that's appointed as a leader, and that person has to be able to create a vision for the group and try and drive that vision for that group. And I'm going to come to you, Mr. Oluseyi. In order to do all the things that Elma has highlighted, I think one of the key ingredients is trust, right? In Nigeria, we actually suffer from a deficit of trust. This is even within people that supposedly know each other, not to even talk of people that don't know each other. So how do you build trust with another organization towards a shared vision?
Yes, Bukola, I agree with you on trust. And Elma and Titoyi were both alluding to the fact that we need to balance a purpose, ensure that we all work towards the same purpose. And I think that is still conventional way of thinking around collaboration. And I would like to challenge that, because when you think about collaboration differently, then sometimes you're not agreeing. And you alluded to that also on the problem. You're not even agreeing on the solution, not to talk of who exactly would implement what and would do what. So I think for us to, while trust is important, I think for us to be able to collaborate effectively, there's a need for us to embrace those messy realities that we've not learned to embrace, which is we must embrace conflict in collaboration. We must also learn to embrace connections. I will connect with some people will not connect with me. Whatever it is, we must stretch beyond ourselves. And that's why I like Helma's conversations around leadership. Someone with very strong emotional intelligence will be able to stretch him or herself to get out of that comfortable space to say, yes, I know I don't like this person, but we're working for a purpose. So let's find a way around it. And when conflict happens, we see conflict as part of the process of building an effective collaboration. There's a part where we also need to experiment. So we must understand that interests, agendas are different. However, how do we experiment with this partnership to see what would work, what won't work, and what exactly are we happy to give in terms of ensuring that the partnership also works? So we must step into the game, like Elma suggested when talking about leadership. Stepping into the game also means that you sit back and say to yourself, what am I happy to sacrifice for this partnership to work and for us to get towards that purpose. But collaboration does not necessarily mean, and this is the reality I'm also getting, having paid attention to collaboration, those that have worked, those that haven't worked, the dynamics of managing a network, and this training that I talked to you about, where I'm learning about how to build organizational resilience, and collaboration was one of the topics. So I was reading a couple of publications, and I learned that again from experience in terms of the work we do, we must now embrace conflicts, all right, in collaboration. We must prepare for them, we must plan for them, and we must not necessarily see them as something that is bad, because we are all coming with different thoughts. Of course, trust is important. However, we cultivate trust also. So trust is not something you are given immediately, you earn it. And how do you earn it? By how you manage a conflict, by how you also embrace conflict. You do some trial and error. And there's also the role of co-creation. And when I say co-creation, it means that this is the idea we have. How can we both co-create it organically without thinking too much of self and without bringing too much of organizational branding and all of those bits into the conversations? Yeah. Over to you, Buko.
Thank you. I think you raised some really good points. I think that even me, when we first got started, we always see conflict as an end rather than a means, right? Like when we have a situation where several people, even within our own organization, are conflicted about which direction we want to go or how we want to do a certain thing, if you hit a conflict, then you say, okay, it's time to stop. But what I'm hearing from you is that, okay, it's not a time to stop. It's a time to manage whatever those differences are, and then use it as an opportunity to co-create. So let me come to you, Tony. Like, how have you managed conflict running your coalition, or even within your organization, bearing in mind, like Mr. Oluche has said, that conflict will definitely arise?
Yes, definitely. Like I think Elma mentioned something is about vision. One thing I've realized is that, yeah, everybody will have their own idea, but we still ultimately have a goal. Like for us, it's about sickle cell. And I keep reminding people, let's remember who we're doing this for, regardless of whatever our differences. That's why even when there's conflicts, I'm the type of person that I don't have issues. I still work with you. I just know, okay, these are the challenges I might see. This is where I'll notice that, so I know where to avoid, so that there will be no extra conflict in the matter. So I think it's about reminding people about why they are doing or why we're doing what we're doing. And that's what I keep repeating. When Emma was talking about leadership, I mean, I even said that it's even, there's some organizations or some coalitions where they don't even want to recognize that leadership. Everybody is entitled to also. I want to be the leader. No, you be this one is supposed to be the leader. And we tend to, because of this, we tend to forget why we're ultimately here. It's all about, okay, showing myself as this person or that person. And I think it's just about continuously reminding people why you're here and why you're doing what you're doing. The people who are looking to you to help them in whatever scenario it is. And once we remember that it's not about us, but about the people who are there to serve, I think that's what's even pushed, because even sometimes when I feel frustrated, I just remember why I'm doing what I'm doing. Even at work, I keep reminding them, I'm doing this because of these people. And if we give up, what will happen to them? And I think that's ultimately the vision we need to keep renewing in our minds that we're here for.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from you is that for you, how you manage conflict is that you put the vision first, right? Even when you have differences between yourselves, you think about the long-term goal of whatever it is and use that as kind of like motivation to solve the conflict. That makes perfect sense. What about you, Elma? What has been your experience managing conflict, either in collaborations or even within projects in your team?
I like that Auntie Tony is very, pragmatic about, how she manages conflict. But for me, I feel like I personally understand that everybody walks into a room with an agenda. There's always an agenda. I might be in a collaboration because I want my NGO to be so and so, even though the further goal is so that people living with sickle cell can have access to blah, 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 blah. Fundamentally, for a lot of people, collaborative efforts is a means to an end, right? Is it a good thing? For some people would say yes, some people would say no, it's relative, right? At the end of the day, even the vision itself is an agenda. The main vision is an agenda. So everybody walks into that space with an agenda. For me, I feel like the first thing I would usually do is identify what the various agendas are. What is this person trying to achieve? What is that person trying to achieve? Once I get a hang of it, it's then trying to see how all of these agendas can fit into the main frame. So if we're trying to make sure that people with sickle cell in Nigeria have access to health insurance, for example, this person might be pushing for, private HMO. The other person is pushing for no NHIS, because they all have individual things that they're going to gain from it. It's now a function of how do I make sure that this vision carries, it's like a vessel that carries everybody's agenda. And so when you say you carry everybody along, it's not the people you're carrying along, it's the agendas that they're pushing for that you're carrying along. So for me, it's okay, how can everybody fit into this vision? Identifying their spaces, breaking it down. Okay, you take lead on this, you take lead on that, just so that you keep everybody satisfied and they're all keying into the vision, because at the end of the day, what you want is for everybody to focus on the main vision. They won't do that if they have to be thinking about all their own, needs and stuff. So just channel everybody to the top through their strengths, and it doesn't remove conflict like Mr. Shea said. Let me get the name correctly. Yes, Mr. Shea said it doesn't remove conflict, but it sort of helps you when you're identifying and dealing with conflict, because most times when there's conflict, it's because these personal agendas are beginning to, clash. They're not keying. So, okay, you find your way to the vision. This is your own way to the vision, and everybody just gets there. And it's, I think for me, that's a structure that has worked. Yeah.
That's really interesting. So for you, it's not about aligning the individuals. It's about aligning the individuals' visions and their own goals together within one main frame. That's a very interesting way to put it. Okay, I think I'll stay with you now and talk about when to start thinking about collaboration. So if I'm an organization, I've identified an issue, which is maybe, for example, prosthetics, and there isn't enough prosthetics for amputees, which is what the Era Day Foundation, for example, does. And I want to do something about it, and I'm thinking about how to start, how to fundraise, how to get publicity, how to do the actual projects that we want to do. At which point should I start thinking about collaboration? Is it when I'm well established, when I've been working for 2, 3, 4 years, then I can start thinking about collaborating with other NGOs? Or is it something that from the very beginning of when you're conceptualizing your idea, or whatever it is that you're trying to do, that you should be thinking about collaboration? When do you think is a good time?
So I think when an NGO is started, brand building is one of the things that they would focus on, because without a solid brand, you can't really access funding. You can't even approach certain organizations for partnerships or for collaboration. So once you're at the brand building stage, you sort of begin to have conversations about, okay, who are we comfortable working with, or who's our target collaborative partner? So, conversations like that. So I think that from the beginning, it's a conversation that happens. But I find that a lot of NGOs, in the bid to build their brand, they spread themselves too thin. They start attending to every single issue. Oh, a patient needs crutches, and they start fundraising for crutches. A patient needs a hip replacement, they are fundraising for hip replacement. And I think that it's not a sustainable way to go about it, because there are organizations that have their core as these specific things that you're trying to do. So what is your organization's core? When you identify what your core is, any other thing that is an idea or a proposed project or whatever, if it's not your core, you shouldn't be doing it. Instead, if you want if you want your brand to reflect that you're into work like that, then it would be an ideal time to collaborate, to find a partner you can work with. And it's a win-win situation for both parties because you get the patient's needs solved, and that organization has also gotten their mandate. They are one step closer to achieving their mandate, in collaboration with you. So I think that from the beginning is the best time to start, just so that you know what your core area is and you don't spread yourself out of it. And in the process of doing that, you identify who collaborators can be.
Okay, I get what you're saying. So you think that you focus on your main core, whatever it is your organization is out to do. And if you have other ideas that are kind of related to that or to specific needs of people within your that you're trying to support, then you think about collaboration, right? So for you, it's not so much about a timing of when you should be thinking about collaboration. It's about what the need is. Okay. And what about you, Toyin? How would you approach it? So when a new organization is starting up, when should they be thinking about collaboration?
I agree with Elma. In fact, I was nodding my head as she was speaking. Basically, I think it should be based on needs. It's not everything that you necessarily need to get involved in. Like you said, you spread yourself too thin. I remember when my staff were coming up with this project, that project, I said, look, calm down. Let's do what we know how to do. If there's an organization that does this, let's involve them. Like I give a scenario, some weeks back, I wanted to help our young adults with businesses, their businesses and loans and everything. And they were trying to get us to do some things like start, what's this thing? I've forgotten the name, where you loan money and all that, those association things and all that. And I realized that, look, there's another NGO in the disability space who is involved in this. Why should we reinvent the wheel? Let's just collaborate with them, and they take on the people we want to help in their business, which is what we did. So I think it's as you grow, you find your needs. It's not everything we do. That's why it's very important to define, okay, what our program is, what our projects are, because sometimes we mix the two together. We don't define what our programs are, and then we think our project is our programs. No, there's two separate things. The project is under your program, so you have to know what your program is. Then define what projects you want to do under those programs. And if it's something that you don't have the capacity, especially as a young NGO, there's not everything that you have a capacity with. So you look at, okay, who is in this space that we can collaborate? And when you collaborate, don't think of it as, okay, the person will bring everything. There has to be mutual collaboration in the effort. What are you bringing into the space as well? Rather than just, I want you to do this, No, you have to think of, okay, as this person is giving me, if this person is giving me finance, am I bringing the technical know-how? Am I bringing human resource? We should look into things like that so that we don't find ourselves getting involved in too many things, and then you lose focus on what you're supposed to do in the first place.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to come over to you, Mr. Oluseyi. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think my thought would be, one, while we encourage collaboration, and I'm not speaking against collaboration, is to say that collaboration isn't always the best option, okay? So I agree with Helma that you have to, while you're starting your nonprofit, you need to think through which organizations do we need to collaborate with, whom do we need to partner with, whom do we need to bring in for building our strengths and our weaknesses and all of that. However, you must check your own temperament or your DNA as an organization. Do you have the ability to listen, right? Are you able to tease through diversity of perspectives and use that in your work without necessarily feeling that someone is becoming difficult? Because, those diversity of perspectives also bring about conflict in itself, plus also some level of disagreements, which can be healthy for collaboration. You must ask yourself, how creative are we? How experimental are we? How ready to share and co-create are we? And there are a couple of questions you must also now ask yourself. Can we do this all by ourselves? If you see that you can do it all by yourself, go the long haul and do it. But for the areas where you think that you can't do it by yourself and collaboration is necessary, then you now need to build the right DNA. That means that you need to be ready to invest time, invest resources, invest some level of discomfort, and stretch yourself for you to accommodate all of the challenges that comes with collaboration. So it can be easy to collaborate on some issues, but there are some difficult issues that it is very, very difficult to collaborate on, especially when there are different perspectives. So you have to understand those issues, and you also have to be able to learn within collaboration. So while those issues are happening, or while you are collaborating, what lessons are you learning? So I've worked in a collaboration where all I just did there was just learning, even though we're investing all of the resources and trying to drive it. We're also paying attention to the learnings from that collaboration and how it is important. And note that collaboration is not between nonprofits alone. You have to learn to collaborate with government. You have to learn to collaborate with the private sector. And all of this comes with different elements and different dynamics. You get into a government office and you see someone who doesn't even want to see your faces. How do you not necessarily ennemify that person, but find a way of ensuring that you're able to navigate and work together? So there are a lot of elements that we need to think through. And that's why I started my intervention on your question around collaboration isn't always easy. It won't be easy. However, you must learn to cultivate the right relationships for it to be easy. There will always be enemies when there are different thoughts. And when I use enemy, I'm using it loosely because there are people you also don't like and people that do not like you. But when you find them in spaces where you need to collaborate, then that means that you have to stretch yourself. So that's why as part of that course that I'm doing, there's what they call conventional collaboration and stretched collaboration. That stretched collaboration is what we now need to adopt as individuals, especially on problematic situations that are not straightforward. So it's very easy for Sickle Cell Foundation to say, "Oh, basically, can you collaborate with us on this Zoom event?" Very easy. I would just say, "Well, go ahead. What do you need me to do?" However, when it comes to myself and Sickle Cell Foundation, writing to the same funder and asking for money, that's when we now begin to see a lot of elements and different, who manages this money? How can your own logo be the first? Why are you not giving us visibility? And those are difficult, conversations that we need to, but it does not necessarily mean that it should end the relationship. It just means that we have to pay attention to visibility and develop a structure around how we would address it. It means that we have to pay attention to who manages the resources and say, what will be the governance for this project or for this issue and all of those things. So just to situate the conversation, say sometimes collaboration can be convenient and sometimes it can be very, very inconvenient.
Mr. Mushe, I'm really interested in this course that you're doing. It seems like it's dropping a lot of gems for you.
I agree with you. It's really dropping that. Yeah, it made me think collaboration way differently. Yeah. And also now I'm challenging some of my own thoughts around, we must all work together. Not necessarily. Yeah. But where we need to work together, do I have the DNA to ensure that we're able to work together?
Yeah, no, I'll definitely reach out to you to learn more about this course. I think what you raised some really interesting points about enemies and how, like, even just by working, you can encounter people who are, let's just say, challenging, in a way that you sometimes don't envision. And when you said the logo thing, I was laughing because we've had a whole dispute with an organization just on the position of a logo or the fact that a logo isn't, somewhere where it's supposed to be. We printed some things and they were like, "Where's our logo? We are no longer working on this collaboration if our logo isn't on this." Do you know what I mean? And so really some things that you might think are very trivial, but they can really throw away your whole work that you've been planning for a long time. So that's a very interesting point. And maybe conflict management is a whole other kind of topic on its own that we might have to delve into. I'm going to do one final round of questions for the panelists, and then please, everybody who has questions, our attendees, please use the Q&A function to type in your questions, and then we'll take questions for the last 15 minutes or so of the webinar. So the last question is about duplication of efforts. And I know that that's part of the reason why we started, thinking about this conversation, why we have the Coalition of Sickle Cell NGOs and organizations like Nigerian Network of NGOs, is it seems like in whatever space that you're working in, there is hundreds of NGOs working in that exact same space, but it does not seem that the needle is moving, if I should put it that way, in whatever, if it's women, entrepreneurship, if it's child education, if it's HIV, whatever it is, there's, and I'm sure, Mr. Aluche, I'll come to you first with this question. I'm sure there's dozens and dozens of NGOs working on the exact same program, not even, how we're saying some people are doing this, some people are doing that. No, the exact same program being done in different places, and it seems like there's no synergy. So I guess my question to you is, do you think that the lack of synergy or the duplication of some of these efforts that we're doing is part of what isn't moving the needle forward? Or do you think that it's just that the challenges are so great and they're all across the country that we are not seeing some of that kind of progress that we would like?
I think there's progress. However, where the problem lies is we all do not document our work in ways that helps us to capture the right metrics for measuring impact. And also because of the enormity of the challenges, I will not necessarily, and I'll be courteous here to say that we are working, I've forgotten how you framed it now, because the thing is, if you are doing HIV/AIDS in Lagos, and I'm doing HIV/AIDS in Oyo State, we are serving different populations, however, with the same issues. Whereas when you look at the cumulative of that population, sometimes you might have them in millions. So let's put a figure, just a figure, not necessarily the right data. We have 40 million people. Let's say we have 40 million people having HIV/AIDS in Nigeria, all right? I can only reach the ones in the community or in the area where I'm working, okay? So whether we like it or not, we would still work as individual organizations for the target audience or the beneficiary that we have said we're going to work with, all right?
Okay, can I just challenge you on that? I guess my question is, why do we need one NGO in Oyo State working in HIV, another NGO in Lagos State working on HIV, when we could have one NGO for the whole of the Southwest, right? And with pulling resources, pulling individuals, pulling expertise together, and then dispersing it from a centralized pool. So I guess my question is, isn't the decentralized nature of the work that we're doing, isn't that holding back some of the impact that we could be making?
No, not necessarily, because, when you look at that population itself, there are women living with HIV, there are children, there are men, all right? And we have different expertise. Some might say, I want to focus on women. Some might say, I want to focus on men. Some might say, I want to focus on children, and that diversity. So there's beauty in diversity. And so let me take you back to, why do we also have 36 states of the Federation? It's because, Yorubas have their own different thing. Igbos have their own, Hausas have their own. And we must find a way of ensuring that we all work together. So there's always a point where we all need to work together, all right? And that point of where we need to work together usually would be at the point of using lessons from our work to improve advocacy, to improve policies, to set the agenda, all right? That's where we all need to work, but different expertise. For instance, there's Nigerian Network of NGOs that works on regulatory issues, that works on capacity building. There's a Sickle Cell network that only deals with NGOs working on dynamics of sickle cell and all of those bits, okay? So if you say all of us should merge together, our issues are different, our strengths are different, our approach to addressing some of these issues would also be very, very different. So there's beauty in that diversity. However, how are we all at some point sharing data, sharing lessons for us to measure our impact, to say, in Oyo State, what dynamics are you seeing? In Lagos State, what dynamics are you seeing? And how does that give us a full picture of the dynamics in Nigeria so that when we're talking about HIV or another issue we're working on, we're able to bring all of these dynamics and these elements together. And this diversity of thoughts helps in program planning and all helps in policy development. But if we all do about the same thing, we won't have different approaches to how policy should be shaped. For instance, you're talking about policies around the pandemic. You must now focus on ensuring that some nonprofits are treated as essential service. Because the work Sickle Cell Foundation or the work SAMI does now requires that those having sickle cell must be able to access their medications or access medical services. So when you do not designate nonprofits as essential service, some nonprofit activities as essential service, then when you say people should not move or people should not move from one place to another, then it affects that group of people. But if Sickle Cell Foundation were not to be in the room at that time, then we won't be able to understand that dynamics. So what I'm trying to say is, if all of us head into one direction, there are a lot of dynamics that we won't capture and will be leaving people behind. And again, this is where collaboration comes in. But as I've said, we need to tease out when are we to collaborate and when are we not to collaborate.
Okay, so I think from what I'm getting from you, you believe in the strengthening of local governments over the federal government.
Totally, I'm all for local. Every development is local, so I'm all for local.
Okay, yeah. Makes sense. Okay, Tony, I'm going to come to you with that question as well. In terms of duplication of efforts, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, initially, actually, I thought when I started the NGO, I always thought I was like everybody else. Oh, there's so many people doing stuff, but I realized that like everybody has their own way of passing out a message. Like if I was to go to the hinter rural areas, that is not my strength. Like if so I'll collaborate with somebody who already has that strength and go there if I need to go there. So I think diversity, as Mr. Oluseyi said, is very important. It's not everywhere that we can cover. And when you are saying, that a region covers the whole of this, it's not realistic. Manpower-wise, it's not realistic. Financially wise, it's not realistic. So that's why we have all these other people doing their own thing in their own space. But at the same time, we look at elements where, like it says, where we can trade in data. We don't really document. I was even at an event the other day. I think it was even an NGOs course that made me think about a lot of times when I scream data to my team, it's an issue. Because it's not just because we are not just quantitative, we are qualitative. And sometimes we do more of the quantitative data and not the qualitative data, which also impacts us. So we have to always look at these things and see how we can collaborate to give information about the things we do, because it's let me give you a case in point about knowing the real number of people with sickle cell but if we were to collaborate, each of them was giving your data based on the people you have, then we would have an idea and not be guessing the 1990 something population issue. So I think that's it, because we always tend to think we don't have data, we don't have survey, we always rely on government. But even in our own small community, I was just sitting down the other day and I said, wow, the people in our clinic are a community. A community doesn't have to be a village somewhere. That is a community in itself. And it's our ability to tap into that community and get the information, get the documentation, and be able to share it to other people so that we can get the correct data is important. That's it.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. And what about you, Elma? This is just our final question. What's your take on duplication of efforts in NGOs?
Okay, so the question is for NGOs, but let me just speak specifically for sickle cell support NGOs or NGOs that work around sickle cell. Now, what I've found over time is that a lot of NGOs that support sickle cell are passion projects. Passion projects in the sense that, oh, this person in my family died of sickle cell. emotionally attached to this. So I want to make sure that other people that have sickle cell in Nigeria in this demography or that demography don't have to go through these same things. So then it comes to, okay, what can we do to help these people? We're giving food, we're giving drugs. And then the more you start getting funding, you now say, okay, in fact, let's start doing genotype testing. Let's start doing this. And 2 years down the line, it's like, you know what? We should even talk to Auntie Tony so that we can do this together and do that together. So a lot of NGOs don't actually have a plan. And beyond short term, they don't have long-term plans. So that affects the quality of data that is being collated, because we give 60 people in Ohafia today, tomorrow we give 100 in Ijebu. That information doesn't translate to, oh, we recorded that there are 60 people with sickle cell in Ohafia and there are 100 people in Ijebu in 2010. So that next year, when we're going back there, if we're giving 1,000, then we know that the numbers have increased. Somehow that affects the way data is collated and the way data is translated. So I think first and foremost, the challenge with the question in itself is that a lot of us don't know the scale or how to measure the impact that we're doing, because we are moving from a place of passion. But then if you go and that, what is the role in quantifying? Because in Nigeria, data of an end. So much data as supposedly gathering, trouble for gathering and
sharing. Sorry, it seems like your network is disconnecting.
Am I on now?
You're breaking up.
You're breaking up. It's a bit hard to hear you.
Still breaking up.
Yeah, maybe try turning off your video and see if that helps the bandwidth.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I was saying beyond there's for collating, because we collecting data is not it's not a duty for NGOs. That's the function of government agencies or desk officers or whatever. So in the process of trying to gather data and share data, you are going to get into trouble. So then it leaves the question, whose duty is it to put this data together? And are they giving an opportunity for NGOs to even feed into that mainframe? Okay, today we went to Ohafia, we got 60 people. You report this to that person and it is reflected in the data. Does Nigeria have a data report on sickle cell? Have we done a census on sickle cell? What is our government's position in, collating information on sickle cell? I think that's where the major challenge is, because sometimes we do work that is not our work to do, and we start blaming each other for not having or exchanging information and all of that. It's all good and fine to want to collaborate and work together, but there's a role that everybody has to play for it to make sense. And for me, this particular conversation on exchange of data, when to collaborate and how to streamline so that we're centralizing or not decentralizing, the government has a major role in setting the direction of how that conversation should go. And for me, until that aspect is gotten correctly, I don't want to say we're just not going to get it, but it's not going to really make sense. If I was registering my NGO and I was told from registration, oh yes, for the type of NGO you're registering, you should go and meet so-and-so officer. He will tell you what you need to collate and how you can feed into Nigeria's mainframe. That is a conversation that is useful at the point of registration, but we don't have that kind of structure. So even when a collaborative organization wants to take up that role, it is difficult because, again, either from passion or from experience, and that doesn't necessarily collate to data management, which is a different thing altogether. So I think that that would be the way I answer that question. So are we doing what we're doing? Yes, but how do we push all of our collective efforts in a way that it makes sense for the collective, which is people with sickle cell in Nigeria? That is a role that government needs to take a strategic position in implementing.
Thank you, Alma. I think I saw a tweet the other day where they spoke, I'll come to Mr. Eluche, where in the tweet, they were basically saying that Nigeria, we can't NGO our way out of some of these problems. And the fact is that, so when we spoke earlier about leadership for NGOs, the leadership oftentimes in other places comes from the government setting policies for those NGOs as well, helping them direct their efforts. So the government is saying, we're taking this part, you as NGOs take this part. So if we don't have that, then I think that we'll continue to have some of these issues like that we've highlighted. And we have some questions in the Q&A. One is directed to you, Mr. Oluseyi. It says, is it proper for an NGO in a space, for example, malaria demand data from, for example, malaria, to demand data from other NGOs in the same space? Should that be a function or solely for the government? I think that kind of plays into the conversation we're having.
Okay, so let's approach this from a planning perspective. We all plan using data, whether we capture the data or not. There's a question of, oh, how many people did we give money to the other time? How much did we give to them? That's data, right? So whether government or civil society or NGOs, we all need data. And Elma spoke about how we've not done data sensors. So let's assume that we've even done the data sensors, right? Data is both political and technical, so it has to be validated. So if nonprofits that are working in that space are not collecting data, and data for sickle cell clients or patients is underreported, how do you balance it? Okay, so there's the role of government in collecting data, and there's the role of those actors in that space also collecting data in ways that helps us to balance up the deficit in data collection and to say this data is accurate or this data is not accurate. In the end, this helps us in planning. Now, you can't get that at the point of registration. You must see data for yourself as for your organization in terms of how do we use data to get a sense of our programming and to get a sense of what to project for. So programming meaning in Ibejuleki local government, there are 50,000 sickle cell patients or clients, okay? How do we plan for that? Our money can only deal with 50 out of that 50,000. But who else can take over the 45,000 something remaining? Okay, that's how you're using data in your work. And the 50,000, 5,000 or 4,000 that you have collected and that you've said you are training, do you know their names, their email address, their houses, what medications are you giving them, when are they due, and all of those bits? So that if government comes to your own enclave and says that in this enclave where you're working, there are only 2,000 nonprofits, you have data to say, no, we have 4,000. And these are where they are. And this is what we've done with them. So data collection affects all of us. And there's something we call big data these days. Big data means that data that is not readily available in government, but that is out there. How can we use it for us to still plan? So this is where we must all take data collection very serious as part of our work, because it's also your baseline. Okay, when you say you're in this community, we have helped 50 people, okay? How many people are remaining? There are like 50,000 people remaining. How do we separate your 50 from the 50,000 or whatever that are remaining? So you must collect data, and data becomes important for policy making because it's not necessarily numbers. Data is also what are your clients telling you as to what happens in the hospitals when they go there. The feedback you receive from them, that's also data. So it could be qualitative or quantitative. And all of that joined together helps us in planning national development or local government development. And to the question of, can we ask another nonprofit for data? There are issues around data privacy, depending on the data you're asking for. But if you collaborate, then there are chances of being able to access each other's data for the work that you do. However, it is assumed that nonprofits should actually also publish some of their work, where I can then quote that work to say, according to SAMI, in Lagos State, there are 50,000 sickle cell patients. Out of these, only 10% are receiving sickle cell treatment. And when you cascade that down, the treatment they get in hospitals, they are stereotyped in public hospitals. See, once you publish that on your website, I can use that information also in my work. So I just thought I should flag that and to also plead that I'm 3 minutes late for another meeting that is starting now and say, please, I would have to run now. But it's been
thank you
a very
so much
interesting
for your
conversation.
time. We really appreciate it. We're actually, coming up to the end of the conversation. So thank you for your time, Mr. Oluseyi. And I'll be in touch regarding that course that's giving you all these gems. So thank you for your time and have a nice
My pleasure, and I'll be happy to share. Nice to be on the panel with Auntie Toyin and Elma.
Thank you. We'll just wrap up with the last question in the chat box. I'm going to ask this one to you, Toyin. The question goes, how do we measure impact when we take a decentralized approach? I think Mr. Oluseyi has already kind of touched on that, but
exactly.
let's just get your take on it.
I agree, the same thing. When I was even talking about getting data, it's not normally, when he used the word demand, no, you don't demand, just ask people to share data. You won't even believe, even within the government space, trying to get data is hard because they have political reasons for hiding data. So I think it's the way we approach it. Yes, we're decentralized, but once you able to articulate what you actually want, then you approach people in a nice way and collect data. If they don't want to share, move on. I mean, there are some people that might want to share data, or they, as he said, put it up on their website. So it's easy. Yes, we're doing different things, but you find people who you know that maybe you have common ground, and then share your data with. And if you're also doing that, collecting data, let's try and put it up in platforms where we can easily access data.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And Elma, do you have any last words on that?
Well, I think Auntie Toyin and Mr. Seyi has said the bulk of it, but I think that a take home for me from this conversation is translating the work that you do, even though you think it's unimportant. There's no work that is unimportant. It can be useful to somebody else that is trying to put a bigger picture perspective together. So it's important for everyone to actually put due diligence in place to make sure that the work that they're doing is translated in a way that it is useful. So if you are I wouldn't say collating data, because we all know we're not supposed to be, but if you are getting some form of information, publish how that information was gotten. What was the project? What were you trying to achieve in this location? Was it helpful? What were the issues, or were not the issues? Just so that that's also a way for us to collaborate, because I don't need to contact Auntie Toyin personally if I can see that Sammy has done XYZ in Ibeju, as Mr. Seyi had said. It's easy to just pull out this information in a way that it can be cited or recited by somebody else that uses my work as well. I mean, I feel like that's another way for us to collaborate, sharing information publicly in a way that it's useful. I think that that's a take home for me from today. Yeah.
Yes, I actually totally agree with that. We've learned a lot of really interesting things today. I think for me as well, what I've really learned today is the importance of, when we're thinking about collaboration, thinking about it in a systemic way, also not being afraid of conflict, the importance of leadership when we're collaborating, the understanding that it's not every project that you have to collaborate on, and it's not everything that you would work on, and the fact that the duplication of, or what we're calling duplication of efforts, is really the decentralized nature of the NGOs and everybody working in different spaces. And so the more people that we can do that for, the better the impact is for the people that we are actually trying to help. So I want to say a big thank you to Auntie Toyin, to Elma, to everybody that joined us today for the kickoff of our webinar series. Please remember that this is our week-long series for Sickle Cell to mark World Sickle Cell Day. Tomorrow, we're having another conversation on COVID-19, and we'll be sharing all the details of that on all our social media. We're also doing a coalition dance project, a dance webinar, which I'm going to be taking home the prize for, based on all the practice that I've been doing. We have a series of activities coming on, so we are going to encourage everybody to join as much of this as possible and to share as much of it as possible. Thank you all for your time, and I wish you all an enjoyable rest of the day.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.